Welcome to Present Tense Seminar 2, where we'll delve into environmental scanning and community mapping and finish up with digital tools. We spent last month refining our vision and understanding the change we want to make in this world and what makes it unique. So, how many of you think your idea is brand new, doesn't yet exist in the world? And how many of you, through a little research, have found that something else similar may exist, whether in this market or another? We want to do our research so that we understand what's out there and what else may exist that could help us, or we could learn from, or we could partner with. So let's take a look at the environment surrounding our ideas and then map our community for help and resources. Today's agenda is jam-packed. We'll start with core theory around why environmental scanning is important. We'll look at several tools to help us understand our market and our position within it, and we'll apply some examples. After a break, we'll have workshops, which we encourage you to do with a buddy or with a friend, followed by a community mapping exercise, which will explain how it works, and then share the milestone assignment. Then we'll move into the second module on digital tools. By the end of today, we hope to accomplish a couple things. We want to focus on why it's important to know our environment around us and what our market looks like. We'd like to start to identify other players in our space, learn a few different tools for scanning, and tap into the resources in the room and beyond to further our ideas. We're wrapping up the first phase of the curriculum, inspiration, believe it or not. And in this phase, we continue to explore that which inspires us and determine the best way to address it given the context of the market. Next month, we'll move into ideation. So I ask that you take a minute and click on this link to watch a video from Godcast, which is an amazing service created by a Joshua Venture Fellow, to follow the story of the Jewish people as they prepare to enter the land of Israel. And this is from Parshat Shlach Lecha. Take a couple minutes, watch it on your own, and then come back to this slide. Now, think about what you took away from that. Were there core messages that stood out to you? Did anything sort of wake you up and make you think about the story a little bit differently? What I saw, what this amazing clip showed, is that there are many different ways to enter a potential land or a potential market. And what God did and what Moses did when they were ready to put the people forward into the land of Israel, they sent a few people in advance ahead of them to scope out the land. You may even call them spies. And what happened? 10 of them came back and said, "No way. There's no room for us. It's overcrowded. There are giants. It's scary. There's no room for us. We're not going to enter." But 2 came back with a different perspective. 2 of them came back and said, "You know what? It's a land of opportunity. We'll position ourselves differently. We think that there's space." So it all depends how you look at it. And it's time for you to think about what kind of spy are you? As you think about the market you're looking to enter and you start to do your research, how do you look at it? Do you look at it as a potential opportunity, as space for you? Do you see others doing something similar and say, "There's no room for me"? Or do you find a happy medium and say, "Let me find ways to partner and collaborate and make the world better for all of us"? Knowing how to survey the market is crucial to success. So the first step before you can actually look outside is to look at you and understand your unique value. So again, who is your primary customer? We looked at this a bit last month in visioning, and now you've done a little more thinking and a little more research. So try to hone in on that 1 or 2 target market groups. Who are they and what do they value? So let's take an example, a really simple product, Diet Coke. How many of you drink Diet Coke? And why might you drink it? I personally don't drink it, but I have friends who do, and I know that they find the product useful or appealing because it's refreshing, it's tasty, it's caffeinated, wakes them up, it's decidedly low calorie as opposed to alternatives. Any other value propositions? As you can see, there are many different values that various customers might place on this product. It's important to think that every person might come to your product for something different, and that it's your job to actually try to cater toward those different value propositions. Now let's take a look at a service, and one that's particular to the Jewish community. Many of you are probably familiar with Taglit Israel, Birthright Israel, which offers free trips to Israel for 18 to 26-year-olds, for those who have never been on an organized trip. So that's the target customer. It's actually fairly specific. It's for Jews, I forgot to mention, although it's only one Jewish grandparent as far as I know. And what are the value propositions? Why might people go on Birthright Israel? Well, most obvious is probably that it's free. And that's actually the way they positioned it in order to close down any barriers that people might have about choosing this as their winter or summer break trip. So it's free. It's an organized trip. They're able to see a tour of the land with tour guides. They're able to experience a whirlwind of a country in just 10 days. They're with a peer group, so they're with people their age. It's a great social opportunity. It's a great networking opportunity. For others, maybe it is an entree point into the Jewish community. Truth is, you really never know, but I think it's important to start looking into the various values that customers might ascribe to your product. So think a little bit about, again, who is your primary customer or customers, and what are their various possible value propositions. Try to think outside of the box to consider values that you may not have even come across yet. And next, we're going to start looking outside. We're going to start to perform market research in almost the most basic way. And this is to uncover who else is out there, who else is doing similar work. How might you go about doing this market research? And before even going into any sophisticated methods of research, tap into your own networks. Look on Google, look on Facebook. The more you talk to people, the more you share your idea, you'll hear, someone else is doing something similar. And what if someone else is doing something similar? Is that a bad thing? Is competition a bad thing? Well, in my opinion, it's not, because it shows a few things. It shows that there's already demand for your service. There's already a need. Someone's already filling it, which means there's a market that you don't have to create. Someone has already established a model that you can learn from. You can learn from both their mistakes and their successes. And there's a potential to either grow this market or differentiate, offer a slightly different feature or to a slightly different target market, but kind of capitalize on what's already happening. So not a bad thing. And at Present Tense, we really focus on collaboration more than competition. So we'll look at some ways to engage with other players in your market in a way to help each other. And a great way to start this is through our first tool, which is called the 4Cs, created by Present Tense several years ago. We've been using it ever since. And the 4Cs offers you a way to segment your market in a way that's manageable. So looking at all the players out there and putting them into the appropriate categories to know how to work with them. So the 4Cs, some of them sound similar, but we'll go through them so that you understand them clearly. It's competitors, comparatives, complements, and collaboratives. But you might notice that at the center of that wheel you see your venture. Who's your customer? Who's your value prop? Never go away from that. Because if your customer shifts slightly or if your value shifts, then your whole map will change. And that's a good tool for you to keep in mind should you try pivoting different ways. So once again, put yourself at the center. And based on who that customer is and what that value is, let's go through these C's. So first we have competitors. It's the same value proposition and the same customer, more or less. So let's go back to Diet Coke, simple product. A competitor for Diet Coke would be targeting the same market, which is, again, people looking for low-cal drinks. That's probably the biggest market. It could be a broad range of demographics, which actually helps in this case. And it's a similar value. So Diet Pepsi, Diet Sprite, right? Lots of diet drinks that are offering a very similar value but are somehow able to coexist in this market space. Next are comparatives, which have, again, the same value proposition but a different customer. So the same value prop might be refreshing, it might be caffeinated, it might be low-cal, but it's a different customer. So whereas Diet Coke could probably go for all ages, let's say a light beer, which has that low-cal value, would be reserved only for certain segments of a market, let's say over 21. And you can think about kind of other comparatives. Next, we have complements. Different value proposition, same customer. So you can think of this as a product that goes with your product. So a complementary product like socks and shoes, like chips and dip, if you're already selling one to a customer, it's a great chance to sell the other because they go together, right? So with Diet Coke, what might be a good complement? You want to think outside the drink market, so maybe low-calorie snacks. Maybe if they're at the movies, it's popcorn that's a little healthier. There are all kinds of complements, and this could be a fairly broad category. Last, we have collaboratives, and collaboratives could be thought of as collaborators, could be thought of as partners. This is actually both a different value and a different customer, but they sort of operate around the same bottom line. They're looking to make that same difference. So obviously in the product world, that's generally making money, but they operate in the same sphere. So people who drink Diet Coke might also go to fitness centers or amusement parks or movies, and maybe they could cross-promote or offer deals to one another or house things in the same space. There are all kinds of ways to collaborate, and this category is actually meant to be as broad as possible. And one more note I want to make about this tool is that the idea is that if you can tell, these lines between the C's are blurry. They're meant to be gray because certain things will exist in multiple categories. Certain things you're going to want to move from one category to the next. So you may think that you have a whole host of competitors. Maybe you can move them closer to the collaborative line. So maybe there's opportunity there to work together. Let's do one more quick example, or actually I'm going to ask that you take a couple minutes and think about it on your own. Take this Birthright Israel example, because it is fairly narrow in terms of its target market and even its value. So a competitor would be some other free trip, maybe to Israel, maybe not, for this same target market that's offering kind of this peer experience, right? Think about what that might be at your synagogue, maybe outside of the Jewish community. What could that be? Now, outside of the Jewish community might let you think that it's a different market. Well, again, these lines are blurry, so that could then fall into also the comparatives bucket, which is next. Different customer, 18 to 26-year-old Christians. Maybe there's a group that exists for them. Who knows? Maybe that different customer is either older or younger, college students or adults. So maybe it's a free mission to Israel through a federation. What's a complement? What might exist alongside a Birthright Israel trip? Well, maybe there are products that go together. Maybe there are t-shirts or sabra hummus or all kinds of things that could sit side by side with this value proposition of a peer experience in Israel. And last, there's collaboratives. Collaboratives, again, are organizations that could be good partners in this case. Many cases it's federations, JCCs, local synagogues. They'll often help you market Birthright Israel trips. They'll want to work with participants when they come back. Collaboratives can be as broad as you want, so try to think really big. Now, what can we learn from our Cs? As we start to identify other players in the market, it's not only helpful to put them on a list and start to talk to them, but to look at how they do business and how they're operating in this space. So in particular, a couple tips. You can look at competitors to think about how are they building their business models and what could we improve upon. Again, if something already exists, learn from their successes and their failures. Think about the Android phone and the iPhone. Similar value, probably similar target market, trying to differentiate themselves and brand themselves differently. I'm sure they do lots of research back and forth to understand what the other is doing really well. Comparatives. Take a look at how your comparatives are doing their work, maybe using different service providers, different vendors, because they're looking at, a different market. You're not actually competing in that market, so there's a chance to learn from them. In terms of complements, look at their marketing, their outreach, their engagement. They're looking at the same target market. How do shoe companies do marketing versus sock companies, just to be kind of simplistic? It's a lot to learn. And collaboratives, lots of opportunities to cross-promote and plan, so figure out who else they're collaborating with, figure out what else they're doing in this space, how they market, how does a JCC promote their activities, where could you fit in? And that wraps up our first tool, and as always, please be in touch with Present Tense if you have questions about how this might work for you. We're going to move into tool 2, which is perceptual mapping, which is ultimately often used in the marketing world, but it's a very helpful tool as you start to categorize your market and understand where you can position yourself. So here's how perceptual map works. If you can see, there are two axes, which list two drivers of value. So we're going to look at the market for packaged chocolate, because we all love chocolate. And when you think about how customers choose their chocolate, They probably consider price and quality, which are generally very common factors that customers will consider. Quality includes, in this case, sweetness, richness, packaging, and price, you know what price is, it's almost always a factor. Then you map out the existing products in the space according to these factors. And this is a map that I pulled, I did not create. And you can get a sense of where things are positioned. So there's clearly a market for low price, quote unquote, low quality chocolate relative to the others, meaning M&Ms, peanut butter M&Ms are great. They're fairly low price. You get them in the drugstore checkout aisle. And relative to Lindt, which you see on the opposite end, catty corner of the perceptual map, it's just not at the same level of quality. You know it, you're not paying for that level of quality, and you're perfectly happy. So in that quadrant, you'll see Kit Kat, you'll see part of Cadbury, because it's, let's say, a little higher priced. Now, interestingly, Mars, which is situated in the quadrant right above the bottom left, is the same company as M&M's. It's two different product lines, and they've chosen to position a product at a slightly higher quality and therefore just a slightly higher price. Maybe they want it for their image, maybe they want to have differentiation among their customers, but it's possible for even one company to position itself in different parts of this map. And as you go forward, you see that further along the quality line, you see greens and blacks and Lindt, Ferrero Rocher, and obviously the price goes up accordingly. Now you may notice that the bottom right quadrant doesn't have anything in it because who would try to compete on a high price and low quality? There's just no space, or there's just no reason. So when you look at a map like this, it's helpful to see, well, is this market crowded? Is there a spot for me perhaps in one of these quadrants? Is there a way for me to produce a higher quality chocolate at a lower price? Probably not easily, that's why it doesn't exist, but see where you can insert yourself. Now, we're going to try to do this in our case as well, with our various fellow ventures, and we do understand that the factors and the value propositions are different in the social impact world, particularly in the nonprofit world, but we think it's a helpful exercise to determine what are your drivers of value. What should be on these axes? And that's actually part of the exercise because three different people may say three different sets of factors, and then everyone else who's positioned around you, the various players, will change depending on how you build that map. So take a minute and think about your venture. In New York, we just did an example of a Jewish arts program, and we built the two axes based on quality of art, and it's a particular medium of art, and I think we called it sort of level of Jewish content or quality of Jewish content, and we were able to build a map based on what are the really high quality arts offerings out there, and how much do they sort of correlate with Jewish content? How much do they incorporate or reach out to the Jewish community as part of their process and part of their strategy? And we're able to build and find kind of the right space for this fellow's venture. I want you to take a little bit of time either now or after this seminar to start to build your perceptual map. And as you've probably guessed, this will also be part of your milestone. So we've started to look at our market and to identify other players, and we've realized that there are a couple different ways to segment a market and to try to narrow, which I would recommend, at least at the beginning, to at least start with a smaller scope and then perhaps expand. So there are lots of different types of market segmentation, and we'll start with just the following few categories, which include geographic, demographic, and behavioral. So some of you have talked about starting your program in your city and then maybe scaling to other cities. So if you're starting a venture in Philly and find that something similar exists in Cleveland, excellent. First of all, you're not competing directly in this case, and second of all, you can reach out and learn from them and see how you might be able to tailor it based on what you know about your city. So that's one way to start geographically. You can look at local versus regional versus national. There are lots of different ways to think about how to segment. You can look at urban versus suburban, etc. In terms of demographics, this looks more at the stats of the users that you plan to reach out to. So maybe their age, their gender, their socioeconomic status, and beyond. So are there ways to narrow? Is it, more of a female product than a male product? Is it more of a young adult product? Are you looking to bring in a segment of, let's say, 40 and over to work with younger adults? Kind of how are you going to set this up? And think about it strategically. Again, this may be just to start, and then you'll expand from there. And behavioral looks at sort of what is consumer patterns. What do your target market consumers tend to do? Are they the types who tend to go to Jewish events, pay for them? Are they outside of that space? Do they tend to go to lots of shows if you're working in the kind of theater or art space? Take a look at what they typically tend to do. And if you're wondering how to find this out, well, on the large scheme, there are, data processes out there, but you're probably not there yet. At this stage, it's really more about talking to them. It's just starting to build a sample and interviewing people who you think might be potential constituents of yours and finding out, well, what are you currently doing? If I'm looking to build an environmental program in my community, are you currently recycling? Are you currently active in any groups helping to better the environment, right? Find out what's already existing, because it's easier probably to convert someone who's already behaving in that way to your product than to convert them to a new behavior. All right, now is when we'd break into workshops, and we'd have you choose either one of the tools, either 4Cs or perceptual mapping, and you apply it to your venture, all the while thinking about how to segment it. And that'll probably come through as you start to build this tool. So if you're on your own now, we recommend taking just a little break and thinking about this. Even if you don't quite build it out, we don't want you to lose that content that we just went through. Or even better, work with your cluster, work with your coach, work with your roommate, and start to build out this map, and then you'll have more time for the milestone. Welcome back. I just want to take you briefly through the exercise of community mapping as we do with a group, because I think that it's a really helpful model, and it's something that hopefully you can do either with your cluster, with maybe colleagues, or maybe if your cohort is nice enough, they'll want to do it again. But this is a really useful resource to just tap the wisdom and the connections in the room. And what you see here is a community mapping exercise that we did online with a group of educators. The methodology is as follows. You're going to take a poster and you're going to list your vision, either the name of your venture or kind of a quick, brief vision, what you're planning to do, who your customer is, and what your value proposition is. Don't take up too much space. You want to leave a lot of white space for other people to add their thoughts. You're going to find a place along the wall, and everyone else in this group did the same. So now you can imagine a room filled with different posters of different people's visions and markets. Then we ask that you go around and visit the other visions. Take a stack of Post-its and write one Post-it for every idea, connection, or resource that you can think of for each vision. For example, if someone is starting a new game, a new educational game for elementary school students in the Jewish community, and they write up their vision and their market, and you have a couple thoughts. You say, oh, I know someone who's working on that in Jerusalem. Why don't you connect with them? Or, I came across this amazing interactive game online in South Africa. You should take a look. Here's the website. Or have you thought about narrowing it to 3rd and 4th graders and focusing on what they're learning in school? Just as an example, this is kind of helping people to not only narrow their idea in order to make it more concrete, but broaden it to bring in outside resources and expertise so that you're not doing this all alone. And at the end of this exercise, we hope that you'll have a multitude of Post-its now put onto your poster, which you can take home and review. And we ask that everyone, as they write a Post-it, puts their name on the bottom so that you can follow up and say, great, thank you for connecting me or suggesting that I connect to Michael. How do I reach him? And this is just a really fun methodology that we hope that you do in some form on your own. Finally, the milestone. We ask that you do your environmental scan by first determining your main drivers of value, and please talk this through with your cluster and with your coach just to bounce the ideas off other people, and create your scan using either the 4Cs or the perceptual map or another tool if this does not speak to you. These are here to make your life easier. And we ask that you try to include at least 5 other players. And even if you're starting in a place where you don't even know another player, I'm sure that the more people you talk to, the more you'll find there are players or organizations out there that you may not have considered similar when you started and now realize you could learn from them. They're doing something with a different market, but maybe it's applicable. Try to broaden so that you can really learn the most from what already exists. And finally, think about how you can segment your market by geography, demographics, and behaviors, if at all possible. And you can just put that sort of as a blurb on the bottom of your milestone. Take a minute and think about what the main takeaways are that you're taking out of this session. If you think about what we learned in terms of theory, tools, and application, what did you learn the most? Jot down a couple things just so that you hold on to them, and then share them when you can when you see your cluster again. And coming up next month, after we finish digital tools, will be social business models and prototyping, and we look forward to it. Thank you.